Hello, and welcome to the channel, or welcome back to the channel if you've been here before. I'm Shimmerback, and today we are doing a bit different of a video. It's actually something I've never done before. So I've been making YouTube videos about video games for about 2 years off and on. I'm not able to dedicate a ton of time to it because I do work full time and even more than full time in a lot of cases. But it's something I'm very passionate about. I love. I've been playing video games for over 30 years now, and yeah, it's something that has been a lifelong kind of preoccupation that's just never left me, and at this point, I don't think it ever will. Um, so I've been making reviews for games, some written, some videos for quite a few years now, and I realized that I've never actually introduced myself on this channel. I've never really introduced my tastes in gaming or what I like or what I don't, that kind of thing. So, what I want to do today, I want to show you just a little bit of my library on Steam. This is primarily what I play on now. And I want to show you kind of what I'm playing right now, what I want to play in the future, but also today's primary purpose is to show my tier list of personal games that I've beaten on Steam and why I feel the way I do about each of them. So today's going to be kind of an introduction to me as a player, as a gamer, as a storyteller, someone who really enjoys the interactive entertainment. But also, it's to give you more of an idea of what I value as a reviewer and why you should watch this channel if you are not already inclined to do so. I do have a few new subscribers from the Mafia series that we've been doing recently. I am getting back to Mafia 3 very, very soon. I've actually just started writing the scripts for that this week, so hopefully there'll be some progress on that in the next few. But let me start with this. So far, I have about 1,000 games in my library, and all of these kind of self-made categories are things that I've just, self-selected, and this is how I organize my library. I'll show you a couple of categories first before we get to the tier list, and probably the most important is going to be this Game Pass legacy. So Game Pass is a category I've created basically to delineate the games that I have kind of seen but passed me by, or they're games that were on a specific console I wasn't able to play for whatever reason. But they're games that have kind of passed me by as a gamer, or that I played personally. So let's just look at a couple of these. Game Pass to Xbox is going to contain each of these are going to contain basically exclusives from that console cycle or whatever from that developer. Or these are just games that I knew was on that console and I played. So Fable, as an example, was a game that was Xbox exclusive, and it still is. And the very first one, I remember going to GameStop the night it came out, or the day after it came out, excuse me, and my stepdad, I had him drive me there so I could pick it up. So I have played this. I beat the hell out of it, all three games. Fable Anniversary is not my personal favorite, but it is a game I really enjoy. Condemned Criminal Origins was one of the very first games I played when it came out on I believe this came out on the 360. It was one of the launch titles. A fantastic game. Has aged pretty well, and I might review this one day. I really enjoy this game. Rise, was a console exclusive. It was a launch title that was kind of a glorified tech demo. Sudeki is one of those games that was also an Xbox exclusive at the time. I never got to play it, so that's why it's here. Part of what I've kind of done over the years of having a Steam account is I've bought games on Steam that I couldn't access on a console, or I didn't have the money for, or whatever, as a kid. The Bully game here on PlayStation 2, when it originally came out, I didn't have a PlayStation, so I never could play this. When the Spyro games came out when I was young, again, I didn't have a PlayStation, so I couldn't play these. Tactics Ogre Reborn here is on a PlayStation, was OG PlayStation, like PlayStation 1. I played the the hell out of this game. I put so many hours in this game, and even here on Steam, I put almost 100 hours into it. So that tells you how much this game means to me. Shin Megami Tensei, this series passed me by. Katamari Damacy, this game series passed me by. So the kind of justification I give for these is I'm kind of healing my inner child by acquiring and playing games that I wasn't able to when I was a kid. Here's one for Nintendo, Doom 64. I actually did have this game on the 64. I did play it for a little bit. I rented it, from a video store back when that was still a thing. And it actually really scared me as a little kid, and I'll explain that maybe one day when I play it. Shadow Man is a game I wanted, and I believe came out towards the end of the Nintendo 64's life cycle, and I didn't get to play it, but I've always been interested in it. So I went ahead and bought it on Steam. Turok 2 I've played. Forsaken, another 64 game that I played and was really, really interested in and really enjoyed. Not sure how some of these have aged or how their ports are on Steam because I haven't played them. But yeah, I'm hoping to get to these, sometime before I die. So Game Pass Legacy here is probably the most important thing that we can look at today. That is not the actual tier list, which is today's video. So the purpose here with the Game Pass Legacy, these are games, I called them Legacy because I've actually owned or played significantly or have beaten all of these games. All of them on, whatever console I had at the time. Most of them were probably an Xbox, one of the later Xboxes, a 360 or a PlayStation 4. I've never had a PlayStation 5. I've never gone beyond the PlayStation 4/Xbox 360, I guess, generation. Never got an Xbox One, never got an Xbox Series X or S, and probably won't. I have not owned a Nintendo console since a Nintendo 64. So I didn't have a GameCube, didn't have a Wii, didn't have a Wii U, didn't have anything like that. So I've missed a lot of Nintendo games over the years. But all of these games here in the Legacy section are games that I've, again, either owned in the past or played or beaten. So my personal library here on Steam are games that I've essentially rebought, about 100-ish. There's probably more in here that I've owned before that I've forgotten to put in here recently. I buy a lot of games on sales, on Steam, on Green Man, on Game Billet, stuff like that. So I have a really great kind of history of buying a shit ton of games, but at a very low cost, compared to what they were when they came out or whatever else. And this is what has allowed me to kind of amass this library. I just crossed 1,000. I think I'm at 1,003 at the time of recording this, and it's mid-March. I did not acquire this quickly. It is 2024, and I created this particular Steam account in 2017. So I've had 7 years to build over this library, and usually I do it during the biggest seasonal sales, like the winter sale, the fall sale, spring sale, stuff like that. So this was not like a quick or easy thing, but I think I've done so at a rate that was fairly affordable over the years. Again, video games are my favorite hobby. They're my favorite interest and always have been. So right here, basically what you'll see in my categories is I had to try to figure out a way where I could keep them all in the categories I want, but alphabetically is the only way that this thing works. So I had to put numbers in here and letters, like an alphanumeric code. So one alpha, one bravo, and basically the one alphas are all the tier lists, the tiers. Excuse me. I put just a 1 here because the S would get in the way of all these. It'd be back here, but you get the idea. So what we're gonna look at today. This is games I would like to review at some point in the future, and I just haven't gotten around to it yet. Ravenous Devils, I actually have the script written for this. I played this for a few hours. I beat it one time. I really love the game. I did write a review. It's not recorded yet, but I'm hoping to get that out later this year for sure. Suicide of Rachel Foster was a super controversial game and still is, and I think for good reason. But I played the game. I really enjoyed it, but not for the writing. The writing is really terrible in my opinion. Um, Tactics Ogre Reborn, like I said, is one of these games that was super important to me as a child. So I have a lot of nostalgia that clouds my current judgment of it, but I still want to do a review at some point of this. Harry Potter's a game, or series I grew up with, so Hogwarts Legacy was a dream come true for me. Maneater's super fun, Mafia 3, next project, and so on. So these are games that I've either played significantly or have already beaten, and I'd like to do a video formally at some point and kind of let everyone know my thoughts. I really enjoyed most of these, and then some of these are going to be games that I didn't super care for, like Carrion over here. That isn't a bad game. It's just not to my taste, and that's kind of why we're doing this tier list video today. Also, if you hear the mouse clicking in the background, apologies. I've tried to isolate this mic from external noise as much as I can, but there's only so much I can do with an untreated room. But yeah, so today we are going to look at all of these 5 tiers here. Okay, we're not going to look at favorites today. We'll get back to that at some other point. This is also, it's very important for me to point out that the Legacy Game Pass down here, Game Pass to Legacy rather, are games that I've beaten, played, really, really significantly, whatever in the past. But I've never actually completed them on my Steam account, okay? And I think it's important to make this distinction now because Outlast, I never actually beat it. I got like 20 minutes into the game and got scared, so I stopped playing. Overlord, I beat a couple of times. Red Dead 2, I've beat. Saints Row 2, I've beaten. The Rainbow Six Vegas games down here, I've beaten a couple of times apiece. But those were years and years ago, and with the modern gaming landscape, there's so many fantastic options of games to play, and these don't always necessarily hold up over time. Some of these are 10, 15, 20 years old. So with newer games coming out, new design philosophies, new technology, stuff like that, not all of those games are going to hold out super well. So I really thought it was really important to only have in my reviews games that I've played recently on Steam, so I can evaluate their ports, their technology, how they run on a system, stuff like that. But also how they hold up in the modern gaming landscape. So we are going to start with C tier because D tier and S tier are the ones that I have probably most to say about. And today's going to be a fairly long video as it is. So we're going to start with C tier, and then we'll work our way up to probably A tier, and then we'll come down to D tier and then go back up to S. Okay. So again, these are my personal tiers. I'm going to go ahead and tell you what these mean now. And kind of how my personal tier system works before we get into the actual tiers themselves. So we're actually going to start here with D tier for the explanation. D tier games, D for me, for Shimmerbag, my rating purposes. D tier is don't play this. Do not play it. Don't buy it. Don't play it. It's a don't. Okay. D is for don't in my case. In some cases, these are just going to be what I consider bad games. In some cases, they're going to be games that I think are actually good or competent or fun, but I don't recommend them for monetization reasons or preying on the player base's FOMO or especially egregious, unwelcoming community, stuff like that. So D tier is not necessarily a bad game. It doesn't necessarily mean the technology is bad or the gameplay is bad. Sometimes it's just a case of I don't think this is worth your time, and I think there are better alternatives, and I want to point you in those directions and tell you. I'm also going to say before I continue that if you like or love some of the games that I don't, that's 100% completely okay. I'm, a critic, a reviewer. I have my own taste and you have your own taste. And if I say I don't like something, that doesn't mean you can't, or it's bad, or it's, whatever. It's just not to my taste. The entire point of making today's video is letting you know what my tastes are to see if I am a valuable if I have valuable opinions for you going forward when it comes to games you'd like to play or try out. Okay. So if you don't like something that I do, or if I hate something that you love, that's okay. We're different people. We're going to have different experiences and different things that draw us to different games. Again, the point here is to let you know what my tastes are so that you can better understand how I review games and why and what my tastes are. So D tier, again, do not play these. Don't buy these. Don't spend your time in them. Okay. C tier are going to be games that are not necessarily bad games. There could be something really good about them. There could be something that drew me to them that I really enjoyed, was interested in, whatever. But for whatever reason, the game just didn't work out. This could be gameplay. This could be narrative. This could be, hey, this was a really cool idea, but it didn't really come through. There's so many different reasons this can be C tier, and we'll explore those more when we get inside here. Okay. B tier games are going to be games that are really fun, really interesting, really cool. They're just kind of average experiences at this point. They don't do the best of anything in their category, but they also don't do anything egregiously bad or terrible or whatever. They're a good time. They may or may not stick in the memory long term, but for what they are, they're good. They're your comfort tier, I guess. A tier are games that are going to be kind of top of the line across the board. They're going to be really fun. They're going to be really interesting. They're going to be very engaging, immersive, whatever else. These are going to be the games that hopefully are the most in everyone's gaming library, simply because they're going to have the best balance of quality to time invested to community to whatever else. These are going to be the games that you're going to spend your money on fairly soon, hopefully in their release cycle. Okay. S tier games. S tier for me, for my purposes of reviewing, S tier games are going to be essentially what video gaming is all about. Okay. The S tier are going to be the best respective representations of a game in their genre. They're going to be, when people think about, hey, what are video games? These are going to be the standout titles that are tip of the tongue, top of the mind. These are the expressions, the purest expressions, the best experiences that video gaming has to offer as an interactive medium compared to, say, movies or books or music. These are going to be the things that, yes, that's what video games do best, and that's why we play these. These are the masterpieces, essentially, of our craft. Okay. Or this medium rather. So let's go into. I keep talking like I'm a video game maker. I'm not. I really aspire to be one at some point, but for now, I'm just a critic and a player, and hopefully a positive influence in video gaming communities overall. So let's start at C tier, and we're going to talk about these. I'm going to go ahead and say this video is going to be fairly long because I am going to go into some depth on these, but some of them I'm not going to have much to say about. Some I'll have quite a bit. So let's get started from here. All right. So in the tiers, they're divided alphabetically. I don't get to decide where they are in the placement, so we're not really going to look at that. I guess I could go through these like least to most C tier or whatever. We're not going to do that. We're just going to go through these alphabetically, and I'll talk about what I really liked and what I didn't. Let's start with Call of the Sea. Okay. Call of the Sea is a really, really interesting game for me to talk about, and it's also one I'm very conflicted on. So remember that C tier are for games that are not bad, they're not terrible, they're not horrible, but for whatever reason they just didn't engage me or I abandoned them, whatever. So Call of the Sea is a game I do stream on Twitch every once in a while. Call of the Sea is a game that I kind of spontaneously streamed one night a year or so ago. kind of out of nowhere. The goal for this was to play a really interesting, beautiful narrative game in one sitting, for our community on Twitch, and just have a chill time, really, really explore the themes, really go through the world, stuff like that. Um, Call of the Sea is a deeply beautiful game. Absolutely fantastic, phenomenal AAA quality, visuals, music, style, storytelling, narrative writing. Everything is fantastic. I absolutely loved being in this fictional, I believe 1920s island, tropical island. I absolutely loved it. Can't say enough good things about the production values. Where Call of the Sea failed for me were the puzzles. I was very glad to see later on that as I looked at other reviews and kind of other critiques of the game that I wasn't alone in this. Some of the puzzles are so obtuse as to be hostile. And what I mean by this is that, it took me 10, 15, 20 minutes to figure out some of the earliest puzzles in the game. And they only get more dense, more complicated, more obtuse as the game progresses. So as I kept going through this, I really got really frustrated. It's very beautiful. The music is great. The story's engaging. It's kind of for me, it was kind of a H.P. Lovecraft meets King Kong type thing. But I really just could not get past how obtuse the puzzles were. Now, part of this is going to be a personal thing for me, simply because I was trying to stream the game and I was trying to be engaging for an audience and, show them a really cool game as we're talking and having a good time. And one of the issues that I have is I kept feeling stupid and I kept getting frustrated. And I was like, man, I'm trying to knock this out in one night. I don't want to spend an hour or two like trying to figure out all the logic behind a puzzle or all the background knowledge I don't have. So Call of the Sea, it's a really beautiful game. It is a game made with an abundant amount of love and care, and it's just a game that just fell flat for me personally because the puzzles were too hostile to me. They were too obtuse. They were, I just didn't get it. Do I recommend the game? I do. I recommend the game for people who just want to kind of lose themselves in a narrative, or wants to, spend some time, bumping their noggin up against a wall. But for anyone who just wants a really chill experience that they're going to get through and just be like, yeah, it was cool, that was fun, I really enjoyed that, not a lot of friction, I really don't. Overall, I do recommend this, but it's in C tier because I just really got frustrated with it. For the right person, this is going to be a game you love. All right. So Carrion is another interesting case. I really thought this was going to be a different game, and that is why this is in C tier. Again, remember that C tier, not bad, not terrible, not broken, not horrible. It's just a game that for whatever reason I didn't click with, and I don't really want to go back to. Okay. So Carrion is a game, I did beat this fully. I think I also did this in one or two sittings. Carrion was a game where what I thought was the case is not what the actual game is. What I thought Carrion was, I thought it was a game where you are this amorphous, predatory monster creature, similar to the Blob or something similar, that would go through this world and slowly terrorize and hunt human beings. I thought you were essentially playing the monster in a horror movie. And you are, but you're really not. This game is, I believe, what people are calling Metroidvania, in that vein, where you go through a side-scrolling kind of map system, overworld map system, and you unlock doors and passageways and walls and all this other stuff using abilities that you've acquired throughout the game. There is no map in the game. That was one of the biggest contentious issues with the game, I believe, with the community who really tried to embrace it, is that it's such an obtuse game. You don't have an overworld map, so you don't really know where you're going or how you're moving through. So it was incredibly frustrating experience for me. This is also my very first Metroidvania ever. Like I said, I couldn't access every game or every game series as a kid, so I didn't get to play the Metroid games. and I do remember vaguely playing Castlevania Symphony, excuse me, of the Night, but I was too young to really get into it at the time. Masterpiece though it may be, but yeah, this was my first Metroidvania kind of experience, and I did not enjoy it. And I'm not sure if I like this genre or not, and I guess we'll find out in the future. Again, not a bad game. A really, really aesthetically beautiful game. It does use pixel art. I really love the world building. I really love the idea of there being this monster that can shapeshift and, murder and terrorize and do all this other stuff. But unfortunately, the puzzle elements and the kind of not having this player friendly over map type thing, it just really fell flat for me. I didn't enjoy it. Do I recommend it? Highly, highly recommend this game for anyone who loves puzzle games, for anyone who loves Metroidvanias, anyone who loves games where you have to figure out, how to traverse environments and solve these little puzzles. But overall, it just wasn't a game for me. And again, I hope this is coming through that C tier does not mean bad. It doesn't mean, it's terrible or you shouldn't play it. It just means for whatever reason it didn't click with me. Okay. And it's not, and yes, I will absolutely recommend some of these games in C tier, but just not for me. All right, let's move on to Deathloop. Deathloop is one of the fucking biggest letdowns in this entire thing. I hate the fact that Deathloop is here in C tier. I did watch SkillUp's review of Deathloop when it came out. He ultimately did not recommend this title because of, I believe, Moon Crash, which is a DLC for Prey, and if I'm saying the wrong thing, I'll correct it in the comments or whatever. Deathloop is a game where essentially you're playing as, I believe Colt here is his name here on the bottom. Colt is a time looping assassin, and his job is to kill, I guess, the visionaries or whatever of this island. They're all trapped in this time loop where they get to live the same few days over and over and over and do whatever they want. And that's a really cool idea. Be trapped in a Groundhog Day-esque time loop where you have violence and, some other things. That seems like a really cool idea. I did play this, it says right here, for 11 hours. I could not figure out this game, and what I mean by that is I did not understand the appeal at all whatsoever. It just seemed very static. It seemed very boring. It didn't seem super enjoyable. The central mystery or dynamic, I wasn't compelled to discover any more about it. I wasn't compelled to understand the relationship between Colt and I can't remember her name, but I can't remember if Colt is his name, so who knows. That's what I mean. Like Deathloop, I watched the trailer. There's this theme song for it. It's such a phenomenal, beautiful looking game with excellent production values, and it's by Arcane, who does some of my favorite games, the Dishonored series primarily. But ultimately, I could not get in this game. It's a game where I've asked, on Reddit, and I was like, can someone please explain this? Because I fundamentally don't, quote unquote, get the game. I don't understand it. So I don't get the appeal. It was rated very highly by critics. A lot of players seem to love it. I don't understand it. I don't understand the hype. I got it for, very cheap on a sale because I wasn't sure how I'd feel about it. I don't like this game, okay? I abandoned it. I didn't actually beat it. I put, 10, 12 hours into it, and I was like, yeah, I don't get it. Don't understand it. Can't get into it. I don't get it. I don't know why. Do I recommend this game? I don't. I can't recommend anyone play this game because, again, with the Dishonored series, I could quote unquote sell that. I could understand the appeal and I could convey that to another person, the enthusiasm for those worlds. I can't do that for Deathloop. So if you do decide to get this, if you do decide to buy it, check it out, whatever, please do so on a pretty deep sale because I can't guarantee that this game is going to be to your liking. Okay, at least according to my tastes. So, yeah. All right. Elite Dangerous is the hardest game to talk about in this entire list. C tier at least, because it's a game that I really and truly loved with my whole heart for such a long time. It says here that I have 163 hours in Elite Dangerous on Steam. I have a lot more on console. I had a lot more on my PlayStation 4 before I upgraded to a PC. I actually came to Elite Dangerous because I was very frustrated with another game at the time called Warframe. And my thing with the Warframe is, yeah, it gave you this ground combat ninja, whatever, feeling. But I didn't really feel it was a good game in the exploration aspects. And what I really wanted was a space exploration game where I could be, human and walk around and build relationships with NPCs and really make my mark on the world. And unfortunately, Elite Dangerous pretty much fails in all those regards. I started playing before the Elite Dangerous Odyssey expansion, where you actually do get to walk around on foot and do things, where you're just kind of stuck in a spaceship chair, as you're basically a ship. The Odyssey expansion did some stuff, but pretty much all of it was added on top of the existing game, which is almost entirely procedurally generated. The game uses this system, I believe it's called the Starforge system. I can't quite remember, but there is a background simulation. There's all this other stuff. It is a one-to-one recreation, the Milky Way galaxy. But everything in the game, the vast majority of the game, 99.99% of it is procedurally generated. And one thing that we're learning about with generative AI is that it can compile and recreate the most basic things over and over and over and over, but it really sucks at novelty. It really sucks at creating something new and interesting. And that's where human devs coming in and handcrafting things is such an important part of gaming. And there are those places in Elite Dangerous. There are places where, there's a really, really famous in-game crash site of this particular spacecraft called the Cobra. And it's by an incredibly important person in the lore of the Elite series. And you can actually go there and you can land and you can get out and you can walk around and look at the crash site and all this other and see the ship and everything else. And that's such a phenomenal thing, like that you can go to this point in the universe and look at. But unfortunately, it's one of such few points of interest in the entire galaxy that it's uninteresting. It's not fun. It's not cool to explore. There is no exploration, because what you're going to do is you're going to find the exact same generic NPCs. You're going to find the exact same generic points of interest. You're going to find the exact same, whatever over and over. Now, what Elite Dangerous does offer is a really expansive playground, but what this kind of quote-unquote sandbox requires for it to become interesting is a player base. And the player base for Elite Dangerous is quite old at this point. I think the average is somewhere in their 40s, and that makes sense because this game series is about 30 years old at this point. It's also overwhelmingly male, and there are a lot of... there's some really great ideas that are being kind of thrown around for what the game could be, but there's also just kind of the old guard who wants it to stay what it was and what they remember and whatever. The game has received quite a few updates over the years, but it just became so uninteresting to me, and it's just the same grind over and over and over for basically what I felt was no reward. I loved this game, and I see so much potential in this game, this series, this world, but almost all of it is unmet. I was a really, really strong, active member of this community for, a few years, and I guess what I kind of learned is that Frontier Developments, who is the company who owns this and develops it, they don't have the will to put the money or resources into this series that it really actually deserves. This could be as influential as Star Wars or Battlestar Galactica or something similar. And I fear it won't ever be, because it's been mismanaged and misdeveloped for such a long time. I hope I'm wrong. I hope in the future there's a sequel to this game, to this series, that absolutely blows us away. something in the vein of, No Man's Sky or Star Citizen, something like that. But I really don't think that's going to happen. So unfortunately, I put it in the C tier. It's a game I loved, but when I realized that it wasn't going to meet the expectations I had for it in the long run, I just kind of dropped it because it was just such a disappointing game, and remains so for me. So, yeah. Do I recommend this? I don't. I don't. It is the absolute best simulation slash spaceship game ever made. But it's such a disappointment overall when you think of and you look at it and you think of what it could be. What Elite really needs is it needs handcrafted points of interest. It needs small cities. It needs actual characters placed in those points of interest. It needs, things to do and people to talk to and actual bespoke handwritten quest lines and world building. And it does not have any of those things. So yeah, sadly, it's a game I just can't recommend. And I really wish I could love this still. I just don't. So yeah, it's kind of sad, but it is also, fun fact, I believe right now it is the highest played game in my Steam library of one individual game at 164 hours. So yeah, most played game and most loved, one of my most loved, but also recently abandoned, and I'll probably never come back to it in its current state. But yeah. All right. Also, before I move on, this is an incredibly dense game. It's extremely hard to get into, and that's one of the things that sucks about it, is the player base I don't think will grow because they have done some kind of quality of life to make it, upgrades to make it more accessible over the years, but it's still an incredibly hard game to get into. Yeah, and I fear, the first couple hours, people are just going to be like, yeah, this is too much work, and I don't want to do this work. That's another problem with the game. It's a hellaciously, stupidly long grind to get anything done. I literally sat for entire weekends just sitting here, driving cargo from one planet to another while listening to music and YouTube in the background. It's one of those games. But I don't like those games. So I don't recommend those. Here we go. Let's move on. I've ragged on this game long enough, but again, it's one of the games I've most loved, and it's one of the biggest disappointments, so that's why. The finals. So I've played this for about 2 hours. It is probably not fair of me to put this here, because I've played so little of it. I haven't beaten it. I haven't really put a lot of time and effort into it. The reason for that, I did play the beta for about 2 hours, and then I've played it now for about an hour. The finals to me is an amalgamation of combat and destructibility ideas marred with one of the worst customization systems I've ever seen. And it's not the system itself. So you have small, medium, and large characters, and that just going to determine their mobility and their health pools, and also what weapons and kit they have access to. I hate that. I can't stand it. Having little Oompa Loompas running around with, silenced SMGs or whatever, and some big chunky boy with a big old LMG. I can't stand it. I don't like it. I think all of them should be medium. I think all of them should use the medium character type, and then just have your kits and whatever determined by something else, not their size, not their health pool. I don't like it. The destructibility was fine, but also you're just fighting in these arenas that are just very uninteresting. It's kind of got this game show vibe, but all of the cosmetics were cringe. I just really didn't enjoy this. I don't think it's a bad game. I think it's a game that I don't care for. Apparently it does have a community who's rallying around it. They quite like it. It's made by ex-Battlefield devs who, know their shit destructibility wise. So I think it could be better, yes. It's just a game that I'm just not interested in at all. Have no interest in continuing, which is a shame because I was looking forward to it. I would like to have a kind of mindless shooter that I just log into and play, but this just isn't it for me. It just missed the mark on so many levels. So do I recommend it? It's free. It's free to play. So yeah, absolutely. Fire it up, see what you think. But I probably won't be putting any more time into it. So, but yeah, again, not a game I could just, I just couldn't really get into. All right, Halo Infinite. Note that this thing here says Halo Infinite multiplayer, so we're gonna focus on the multiplayer aspect of this. I can't split the application into campaign and multiplayer. It doesn't work like that, so we're just gonna have to go with that. I think for the campaign, I would probably put in B tier. It wasn't bad. I don't quite remember it super well. It came out a couple years ago at this point. I believe it was something about like there's a Cortana-esque presence and you're helping this new AI and okay, cool. I don't. The campaign was fine. Like it wasn't $60 fine, but it was fine. The multiplayer was really the star of the show. It's also free to play. I put 125 hours, it looks like, into this. I love Halo. I grew up with Halo. I've read the books. I've played all the games. I've done all the other things. I really love Halo a lot. But unfortunately, this just missed the mark with me. The monetization systems, the battle passes, the cash shop, $15, $25, $30 for a fucking armor skin is just stupid. Like, that's as much as the base game. Like, no, I'm not. Absolutely not. Also, this game just did not get the support it really deserved. It really didn't get the firefights and, the forge mode and stuff like that it should have had, coming out of the gate. So this game has just been limping along. I really did enjoy the multiplayer. I enjoyed building out the armor sets, all this other stuff. But Halo is a game that, to me at least, first and foremost, is for the community. It is not for Microsoft. It is for the people who love it. It is for generations of Halo players. It is not for Microsoft. It's not Microsoft's baby. In other words, it's ours. And they did way too much to monetize this, to make it really hostile to get into. It should have been released in a much better state and supported in much better ways long term, but it wasn't. I did play quite a lot of this when it first came out. I want to say like 30 or so of these hours are from the campaign. The rest are from multiplayer. It was fun, but when I felt that like they'd hit the wall of what they get accomplished with this title, it was no longer fun, and I wanted to play other games. But yeah, Halo at this point is just one of those games that in series that deserves so much better and has once again been so mismanaged. That it's really really hard to recommend these in the modern gaming landscape, and it's really hard for me at least to want to play them. So yeah, do I recommend it? Yeah, I do. I recommend it if you're a Halo fanatic or if it's something that you and your friends can get into. I do recommend playing it. The campaign's not bad. It's quite good. It's better than I think a few of them have been. I just don't recommend this long term. And I don't recommend this if you're really into upgrading and getting everything you can armor wise and stuff, because a lot of these are locked behind a cash shop and I just don't like that. So yeah, really interesting, fantastic, awesome universe with a lot of really lovable aspects to it, but I just don't recommend this very highly, and it's a game that I don't come back to at all, almost at all. So yeah, there's Infinite. Surprisingly finite. All right, next, Star Wars Battlefront 2. This is the not the old one. This is the reboot or whatever you want to call it. An interesting game. The campaign is the worst written campaign I think I've ever seen in a AAA mainstream title of this caliber. A really, really terrible, really, really predictable plot, really bad characters, just probably one of the worst storylines I've ever seen. Just the most... It's like an AI wrote it, actually, because it is so similar to all of the other story arcs that have happened in Star Wars, where you have someone bad, and by the end they're good, and they've been redeemed, and they're so great, and they're heroes, and whatever. It's just dumb. I didn't enjoy it at all. I didn't play the campaign much beyond like the first run. I didn't care for it. I did play quite a bit of multiplayer. I played, I think, about 15 hours of multiplayer, so I did get to play quite a lot of it. The issue with Battlefront 2 is that it's incredibly sterile. The game uses an upgrade system called star cards, which are the most generic thing I can think of. Like, absolutely nothing having to do with Star Wars lore or history or character or world building. Or they're just cards. They're these generic things that come out of these kind of loot boxes in the games, and you can update over time. Released in a really, really terrible, really, really hostile to the player base, as far as being predatory monetization wise. Really, really terrible launch. I love Star Wars. I do. I really love Star Wars. I do not like modern Star Wars at all. So I just did not care for this. I really liked it for the kind of cinematic, like, here's the experience of being a stormtrooper and, raiding whatever, or being a rebel and trying to defend from Darth Vader's invasion or whatever. That was really cool. It's really cinematic, but it's not a long-term game that I wanted to like play, and I also have no friends at all who play this. So for me, again, just a very sterile, probably the safest corporate decision you could probably, like, a committee could probably decide for this. Really beautiful, really great to look at, and really kind of interesting to listen to, but it's just not a lot of fun long term. Also, I thought that the upgrade system, the star card was pretty poorly implemented. I didn't like it. But also, when I tried to upgrade, like, armor and this and that, there was no, like, rhyme or reason to it. Like, there was no, like, it has so many different clone legions in it. And I didn't really feel any different. They're all just basically generic reskins. I didn't really enjoy it. So, not a lot of reason to play this for the fun factor. But also not a lot of reason to play this if you're into unlocking things over time and, having a really rewarding community thing. Also had a really big issue with bots at one point. I never had those issues. We did have a couple of issues where there were just cheaters who were like wall sniping and, stuff like that. But yeah, it's not a game I recommend. I got this game for, I think, like less than $5. If you want to play a Star Wars game, if you want this experience, absolutely, for $5-10, go for it. Totally worth it. But if you have to pay full price for this, I would not recommend it. But yeah, on a deep sell, absolutely, 100%, go for it. All right. Oh man, Vampire the Masquerade. Aside from Bloodhunt, just as a general comment, Vampire the Masquerade has one of the most misdirected presences in gaming, I believe. Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines is, a phenomenal game made by Troika, 20 something years ago. Fantastic, phenomenal RPG, fantastic world, fantastic character building, fantastic everything you can imagine. That game is just a fucking banger. I have not played any other Vampire the Masquerade or World of Darkness game in general that I actually enjoyed. Bloodhunt was incredibly frustrating for me because when I got into this game, the core kind of player base had already learned all the mechanics, kind of figure out the metas, kind of figure out all their strategies, and they were just absolutely dominating everyone on the map. So it's not really, to me, it's not a skill-based game. It was a game of like, hey, once you've got the grind, you're going to destroy absolutely everyone else, pretty much all the time. It was also Battle Royale. I think there's a deathmatch mode into it now. I didn't enjoy it that much. I really enjoy the World of Darkness in general. I really enjoy Vampire the Masquerade in particular. I enjoy the clans. I enjoy the world building. I enjoy all the other aspects of this. The art style is really great. It's a little cringe in some cases, but a lot of it reminds me of the Blade movies, like Blade 1, 2, and 3. Some of the aesthetics from those, which I really enjoyed. So I do like this game. But again, it was kind of, I believe, I can't remember the name of the dev off the top of my head, but I think they reached a point where they realized it wasn't going to be profitable, and they kind of scaled back support. So they just kind of have a skeleton crew on the back end now. Um, Not a bad game again, but it was a game that was kind of perplexing because Vampire the Masquerade and the World of Darkness in general are kind of niche properties. They're not nearly as big as, say, Warhammer 40K or Warhammer Fantasy or Star Wars or anything like that. So they don't have the same install base some of those have. And also, again, they released this game kind of an early access thing where all of the clans were not available. They're still not available. They'll never be added to the game. So it's kind of a perplexing thing, which I understand, small studio stuff like that. But at the same time, this is one of those properties where, like, if you're going to do it, you need to do it right. You need to do it right from the beginning. If you need to wait a few years before you launch to have a complete product that has all of the clans, that has all these abilities, that has all the full story, the full world building, all those things, wait for that. And the other thing I'll say about this too is one of the reasons it failed, I believe, is because it's a free-to-play game. Buying a game gives you this kind of, for lack of a better term, a sunken cost, where a player is going to say, hey, I put money into this. I need to play it. I need to spend some time in this. And buying a game, having a free-to-play game is a game that you can pick up or drop at any time. And if that game is not engaging from the beginning, it's not engaging throughout its life cycle, it's not going to retain people in the same way a game that they paid for would. So, Vampire the Masquerade Bloodhunt was a really great idea. I actually think it was a phenomenal idea. But there were so many things about the game that just wasn't done super well. Battle Royale, fad, all that stuff. Not a game I really came back to and spent a lot of time into. Very fun for the few hours I played, but also just, again, all of these games across the board are either just not my thing personally, or I think their follow through was the thing that failed them. They weren't implemented well, or they weren't supported well, or whatever else. So, yeah. Again, do I recommend these? Some of them I do, some of them I do not. Bloodhunt is free. You can download it. You can play it now on Steam. There is a player base. It's not very big, but you can play it, So yeah, I recommend checking it out if you want just a free game to play every once in a while. But overall, do I recommend these? Yes and no. And it's kind of dependent on what you as a player value, as a person who's going through these experiences, what you're looking for. And I hope you've enjoyed this. I was going to do a single video where I talked about all of the tiers. I'm not going to do that anymore, because that's going to be an extremely long video. So we're going to cut things here. This was C tier. I hope you come back to see the other videos in this series, which will look at B, A, S, and D tiers of my library. For now, I am going to sign off and get some chapstick because I've talked way too much now. And I will be back later with another video where we look through these. Next time, we will come back to look at B tier, and this is a preview for what that looks like. So for now, I hope you've enjoyed this small look into my library and games I've actually played. We're going to come back to this very, very soon, and I hope this gives you a bit more idea of what I do and don't like as a reviewer, and kind of what my values are. But yeah, we will come back to this soon, and I hope you have a great morning, day, evening, whatever. Thank you so much for watching this, and I'll see you next time.